Cameron stood at the edge of the driveway, staring at the bright blue bicycle with training wheels that gleamed in the morning sun. Dark curls escaped from beneath a red helmet, framing a face full of determination mixed with worry. Cameron's favorite purple T-shirt already had a grass stain from an earlier tumble, and worn jeans showed the evidence of many outdoor adventures. Those brown eyes, usually sparkling with mischief, now studied the bicycle as if it were a puzzle to be solved. "Ready to try again?" Dad asked, wheeling the bike closer. The handlebars looked impossibly high. The seat seemed miles from the ground. Even with training wheels, the whole thing appeared to wobble just sitting there. "Maybe tomorrow," came the quiet reply. Dad knelt down, his voice gentle. "Remember what we talked about. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you try even when you are scared." The bicycle waited patiently, its silver bell catching the light. Next door, the Thompson twins zoomed past on their bikes, laughing and racing each other to the corner. They made it look so easy, like flying without wings.
"What if I fall again?"
"Then you'll get back up, just like you did yesterday. And the day before that." Dad's smile was encouraging. "Every expert was once a beginner." Taking a deep breath that seemed to come from somewhere near the toes, small hands gripped the handlebars. The seat felt wobbly as Dad held the bike steady. "I'll be right here," he promised. "Just remember, look where you want to go, not at the ground." The first push on the pedals sent the bike lurching forward. Training wheels scraped against the concrete, making a sound like tiny thunder. Push, wobble, push, wobble. The driveway seemed to stretch on forever. "You're doing it." Dad jogged alongside, one hand hovering near the seat but not quite touching. By the time they reached the sidewalk, sweat beaded on a determined forehead. The bike came to a shaky stop. "That was 5 whole seconds longer than yesterday," Dad celebrated, pulling out his phone to show the timer.
"Really?" Pride crept into the voice. "Really? Want to try once more before lunch?"
The second attempt went better. The training wheels didn't scrape quite as much, and the wobbling decreased from earthquake level to mere gentle swaying. Confidence grew with each push of the pedals. On the third try, disaster struck. A squirrel darted across the path, causing a sudden swerve. The bike tilted too far, and despite the training wheels, gravity won.
The concrete rushed up to meet knees and palms.
"Ow, ow, ow!" Tears threatened to spill. Dad was there in an instant, checking for injuries. "You're okay, just a little scrape. That was actually great steering. You missed a squirrel."
"I don't want to do this anymore."
The words came out muffled against Dad's shoulder.
"I understand. Learning new things can be really hard."
Dad helped dust off the dirt. "But you know what? You've already been so brave today. 3 tries. That's amazing." They sat on the porch steps, sharing a juice box and watching clouds drift by. The bike lay on its side in the grass, looking less scary and more like a faithful friend waiting patiently.
"Dad, were you scared when you learned to ride?"
"Worried," Dad admitted with a chuckle. "Grandpa had to bribe me with ice cream just to get me to sit on the seat. Took me 2 whole weeks before I could go more than a few feet."
2 weeks? This was surprising news.
"At least. And you're already doing better than I did on my first day." Dad ruffled those dark curls. "Everyone learns at their own pace." The afternoon brought new determination. Cameron marched back to the bike with the bearing of a knight approaching a dragon. This time, the helmet went on without complaint, and the handlebars felt more familiar under small palms. "Let's try something different," Dad suggested. "Instead of thinking about not falling, think about where you want to go. See that big oak tree? Aim for that." The oak tree stood about 20 feet away, its branches creating dancing shadows on the sidewalk. It seemed achievable, possible, maybe even fun. Push, pedal, breathe. The bike rolled forward, training wheels providing their reassuring rumble. The tree grew closer. The wind tickled exposed arms. For just a moment it felt like flying.
I did it! I made it to the tree!
The triumph in that voice could have powered the whole neighborhood.
You absolutely did! And you know what else? You were smiling the whole way.
It was true. Somewhere between the driveway and the oak tree, fear had transformed into joy. The bike no longer seemed like an enemy, but more like a key to adventure. The next morning arrived with a surprise. Cameron woke to find a note taped to the bicycle. Ready for your next challenge? Dad. After breakfast, they headed to the park. The paved path there was wider than the sidewalk, with gentle curves and interesting things to see. Ducks paddled in the pond. Dogs played fetch on the grass. Other kids rode by on bikes, scooters, and skateboards.
This looks harder than our street, came the observation.
It is, Dad agreed, but you're ready for it. Remember, being brave means trying new things even when they seem difficult. The first lap around the pond path took 15 minutes and included 2 stops to rest and 1 near collision with an enthusiastic golden retriever. But it was completed, the whole loop, start to finish. Can we go around again? The request came before Dad could even suggest heading home. The second lap took only 12 minutes. Confidence grew with each pedal stroke. The training wheels, which had seemed so important yesterday, now felt almost unnecessary. They barely touched the ground on the straight sections. By the end of the week, something magical had happened. Cameron could ride from home all the way to the park without stopping. The bike responded to every turn, every shift in weight. It had become an extension of will and determination.
Dad, the announcement came over Saturday morning pancakes. I think I'm ready. Ready for what? To try without the training wheels.
Dad's eyebrows rose.
Are you sure? There's no rush. I'm sure. I might fall, and it might be scary, but I want to try.
They spent the morning in the empty school parking lot. Dad removed the training wheels with his toolbox while Cameron watched, bouncing with nervous energy. The bike looked different without them, sleeker, but also more precarious. Remember, Dad said, holding the seat steady, I'll run beside you at first. When you feel balanced, I'll let go, but I'll still be right there. The first attempt without training wheels lasted exactly 2 seconds before a wobble sent everything sideways. Dad caught the bike before it could fall completely.
That was scary. The admission came with a shaky laugh. But you tried. That's what counts.
The second attempt lasted 4 seconds. The third made it to 6. Progress came in tiny increments, measured in heartbeats and held breaths. Then on the 7th try, something clicked. The bike stayed upright. The pedals turned smoothly. The parking lot lines blurred past below.
You're doing it. Dad's voice came from somewhere behind. You're riding all by yourself.
Cameron risked a glance back. Dad stood 20 feet away, hands on his hips, grinning like he'd won the lottery. The bike was moving forward on its own power, balanced by nothing but determination and newfound skill. I'm doing it. I'm really doing it. The shout echoed across the empty lot. The bike made a full circle of the parking lot before coming to a controlled stop right in front of Dad. They high-fived with enough enthusiasm to startle a nearby pigeon.
How do you feel? Dad asked.
Like I can do anything. The words bubbled out. Can we go show, Mom? Can we ride to the park? Can I race the Thompson twins? We can do all of those things, Dad laughed. But first, let's practice stopping a few more times and turning, and maybe going in a straight line without wiggling quite so much. They practiced until lunch, taking breaks only for water and to rest tired legs. Each circuit of the parking lot brought new confidence. The bike no longer felt foreign but familiar, like a trusted friend. That afternoon, the whole family went to the park. Mom jogged alongside with the camera while Dad followed on his own bike. The path that had seemed so challenging a week ago now felt like a personal racetrack.
Look, no hands.
The attempt lasted half a second before wisdom prevailed and hands returned firmly to the handlebars.
Okay, maybe not yet.
One skill at a time, Mom called out, laughing. They encountered the Thompson twins near the pond. Instead of zooming past, they slowed down. "Hey, you learned to ride," Jasper Thompson said. "Want to race to the playground?" A week ago, that invitation would have been impossible to accept. Now it sparked excitement rather than fear.
Sure, but I'm still pretty new at this.
"That's okay," said Jordan Thompson. "We can go slow. Racing isn't about being fastest, it's about having fun." The race to the playground was more of a leisurely ride with occasional bursts of speed. Cameron came in third out of three, but it didn't matter. The wind in the face, the sun on the back, the feeling of keeping up with the others, that was the real prize. At dinner that night, the conversation centered on the day's adventures. Each retelling made the accomplishment grow larger and more colorful.
"Remember when you didn't even want to sit on the bike?" Mom asked.
"That was a whole week ago." The response came with mock indignation. "I was practically a baby then." Dad chuckled.
"And what made you change your mind?"
The question required thought. "I guess I realized being scared was okay. Everyone gets scared. But if I let being scared stop me, I'd never learn anything new."
"That's a pretty grown-up realization," Mom said.
"Plus," the admission came with a grin, "bikes are really fun once you figure them out." The next morning brought rain, canceling bike plans. But Cameron spent the time drawing pictures of bicycles and making a list titled New Things to Learn. It included skateboarding, swimming without floaties, playing guitar, baking cookies without help, and building a treehouse.
"That's quite a list," Dad observed, reading over a small shoulder.
Well, now I know the secret. Everything seems scary at first, but if you're brave and keep trying, it gets easier. And then it gets fun. "You learned one of life's most important lessons," Dad said. "And you learned it all by yourself."
"Not by myself. You help. And Mom, and even the Thompson twins."
A pause for consideration.
"But I did the brave part myself."
When the sun came out that afternoon, the blue bicycle was waiting. Cameron put on the helmet without being asked, checked that the tires had enough air, a new skill learned from Dad, and rang the bell twice for good luck.
"Where to today?" Dad asked, getting his own bike ready.
"Everywhere," came the enthusiastic response. "But first, can we go past the school? I want to see the parking lot where I learned. It probably looks smaller now that I'm not scared anymore." They rode to the school where the parking lot did indeed look smaller. It was hard to believe that just yesterday this patch of asphalt had seemed as vast as an ocean.
"Dad, thank you for teaching me, and for being patient when I was scared." "You're welcome. But you know what? You taught me something too." "I did?"
"You reminded me that being brave isn't about being fearless. It's about feeling the fear and trying anyway. Adults forget that sometimes." They rode home as the sun painted the sky orange and pink. The Thompson twins waved from their yard. Mrs. Chen, from 2 houses down, called out congratulations on learning to ride. The whole neighborhood seemed to share in the triumph. That night, the blue bicycle was parked carefully in the garage, ready for tomorrow's adventures. Cameron looked at it one last time before bed, no longer seeing a scary challenge but a faithful companion. "Tomorrow," came the said quietly promise, "we're going to explore the whole world, or at least the whole neighborhood." The bicycle seemed to gleam in agreement, its bell catching the last ray of sunset through the garage window. It had taken courage to climb onto that seat the first time, more courage to try without training wheels, and perhaps the most courage to keep trying after falling. But now, with skin knees healing and confidence soaring, Cameron understood what Dad had meant. Being brave didn't mean never being scared. It meant deciding that learning something new was worth facing that fear. And as sleep finally came, dreams were filled with spinning wheels and endless paths, a wind in freedom and the joy of discovering that the scariest things often became the most wonderful adventures. The blue bicycle waited patiently in the garage, ready to carry its brave rider wherever tomorrow's courage might lead.